if we know nothing else about Trump, he's transactional. So I don't care what happens. If you go to Mar-a-Lago or you have dinner with him, he's going to get something out of it. He's not the kind of man who just does things for giggles and laughs. And Bill Maher is not this. Bill Maher's position on woke is virtually the same line as Trump. I think he's been a vociferous opponent of woke. I can't even differentiate some of the things that the administration has said about the woke phenomenon, and he has. So I think they have a lot in common.
Bill Maher, I know, disagrees with a lot of what Donald Trump has said and done, and he's talked about that. He does agree with Donald Trump on the woke issue, and he said that woke was a good thing initially, taken way too far by the left wing of the Democratic Party.
Let's be clear.
So, but hold on. Let me just make my point. Why do you have to paint somebody as 100% wrong? You might agree with them on one thing or another. Why not say it? Because you have more credibility about the things you disagree with if you can say that.
Woke is not making Harriet Tubman and black heroes disappear from
no,
from history.
You're right. You're right.
And I think he spearheaded that. It's really his position on woke. See, it's easy for a lot of Americans to not take this personally because it's not their history that is being dismantled. It is not their resume that is being questioned.
Okay, so Bill Maher going to meet with Trump probably makes him one of the most annoying comedians right now. And comedians are very, very annoying. Over something like the woke issue, which really doesn't, I mean, I guess it affects him and it affects his market. First of all, Corinne Steffens lied on a lot of people, but I think she was telling the truth about him when she says he just wanted to be with black women to talk down to them. A pale, arrogant white guy that wears shades all the time sounds about right.
Boy. So we got to talk about Bill Maher, who has a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome, but not so severe that he's not willing to meet President Trump at the White House face to face to have a conversation, which is something that a vast majority of liberals, progressive Democrats would refuse to do. Okay, but Bill Maher says, no, I wanted to go. I wanted to speak with him, to talk with him, even though we have not been friends. And he was pleasantly surprised by his conversation and his experience with President Trump. It turns out that Trump is not actually Hitler, right? That he's not evil, right? That he's not Orange Man bad. And Bill Maher found that out personally. So I want to react to Bill Maher coming out and telling the world about his White House visit and his impressions of President Trump. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm only going to play a little bit of it so that you guys can understand the gist of what he's saying, because liberals are upset about it. So without further ado, let's get into it.
As you know, 12 days ago, I had dinner with President Trump, a dinner that was set up by my friend Kid Rock, because we share a belief that there's got to be something better than hurling insults from 3,000 miles away. And let me first say that to all the people who treated this like it was some kind of summit meeting, you're ridiculous. Like I was going to sign a treaty or something. I have no power. I'm a fucking comedian, and he's the most powerful leader in the world. I'm not the leader of anything, except maybe a contingent of centrist-minded people who think there's got to be a better way of running this country than hating each other every minute. So, thank you. Okay, so meet up in person. Maybe it'll be different. Spoiler alert, it was. First good sign, before I left for the Capitol, I had my staff collect and print out this list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me. Things like stupid, dummy, lowlife dummy, sleazebag, sick, sad, stone cold crazy. Really a dumb guy, fired like a dog, his show is dead. There's 60. I brought this to the White House because I wanted him to sign it. Which he did.
Bruh, you gotta love President Trump. You gotta love President Trump. He said all these things about Bill Maher, and Bill Maher said a whole lot of things about Trump too, right? But he still allowed Bill Maher to come in and talk, and obviously it was not a hostile conversation, hostile environment. You could already kind of tell from this opening story from Bill Maher.
And he gave me a bunch of hats, but he didn't ask me to take a picture in one, which I appreciated. The guy I met is not the person who the night before the dinner shit-tweeted a bunch of nasty crap about how he thought this dinner was a bad idea and what a deranged asshole I was. I read it and thought, oh, what a lovely way to welcome someone to your house. But when I got there, that guy wasn't living there. Now, does Trump want respect? Of course. Who doesn't? My friend said to me, what are you going to wear to the White House? I said, I don't know, but I'm not going to dress like Zelensky, I'll tell you that. But, okay. Just for starters, he laughs. I'd never seen him laugh in public, but he does, including at himself. And it's not fake. Believe me, as a comedian of 40 years, I know a fake laugh when I hear it. And I thank you for them. No. But, okay, example. In the Oval Office, he was showing me the portraits of presidents, and he pointed to Reagan and said, in all seriousness, you know the best thing about him? His hair. I said, well, there was also that whole bringing down communism thing, waiting for the button next to the Diet Coke button to get pushed and I go through the trap door. But no, he laughed, he got it. I said to him at one point, Mr. President, you know the dog, that's unusual in the White House. He said, well, a lot of the presidents, they had a dog for political reasons. I said, no, people love dogs, that's what that is. Oh, yeah. Okay, that's true. I'm telling you what happened. At one point, we were walking through his amazing, it is an amazing tour of the whole house. And I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but it must have been something with the 2020 election, because I know he used the word lost. And I distinctly remember saying, wow, I never thought I'd hear you say that. He didn't get mad. He's much more self-aware than he lets on in public. Look, I get it. It doesn't matter who he is at a private dinner with a comedian. It matters who he is on the world stage. I'm just taking as a positive that this person exists, because everything I've ever not liked about him was, I swear to God, absent, at least on this night with this guy. Bob, Kid Rock, told me the night before, he said, if you want to get a word in edgewise, you're going to have to cut him off. He'll just go on. Not at all. I've had so many conversations with prominent people who are much less connected, people who don't look you in the eye, people who don't really listen because they just want to get to their next thing, people whose response to things you say just doesn't track, like, what? None of that with him. And he mostly steered the conversation to, what do you think about this? I know. Your mind is blown. So's mine. There were so many moments when I hit him with a joke or contradicted something, and no problem. At dinner, he was asking me about the nuclear situation in Iran in a very genuine, hey, I think you're a smart guy, I want your opinion sort of way. And I said, well, obviously you're privy to things about it I'm not, but for what it's worth, I thought the Obama deal was worth letting play out because we made Iran destroy 98% of the uranium, and they were 15 years away from a bomb. And then I said to him, but we got rid of that. You got rid of that. He didn't get mad or call me a left-wing lunatic. He took it in. I told him I thought parts of his plan for Gaza were wacky, but that I had supported him in the idea that Gaza could be Dubai instead of hell. I told him he was wrong when he tweeted the night before that I was critical of all things Trump. Not true. Check the tapes. Moving Israel's embassy to Jerusalem, loved it. The border did need to be controlled. I'm glad the cops are getting their morale back. DEI had gone too far. Biological men shouldn't be playing women's sports. Europe should pay for their defense. And of course, It makes sense that Arab countries should take in Arab refugees, like the million Syrians who wound up in Germany when Saudi Arabia took none. He said to me, "You're right, they took none."
Yeah, so you get the gist of kind of what went down. I don't want to play the whole thing, but you guys kind of can see that what happened at the White House was not President Trump going off on Bill Maher for criticizing him, or Bill Maher even going off on Trump for Trump criticizing Bill Maher. What you saw is two people who I believe probably had some type of mutual respect, and they hashed out their differences. And President Trump is not some egotistical monster who doesn't listen, who only talks about himself, doesn't care about anybody else. I've heard this before quite a bit, right? From people that President Trump, he does take genuine interest in people, right? In the sense that he does care about what people think. And he will ask you, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Because he wants as many opinions as possible. And then he'll form his own opinion about a situation. But he actually does listen. Right. He takes into consideration what people say, which is not something that you see quite a bit, especially from people at his level. Right. When you talk about billionaire, president, a lot of those people tend to think that they're the smartest people in the world and that nobody knows better than them. Right. And they don't listen. But clearly what you can see from Bill Maher's experience with President Trump, that's not necessarily the case. So, of course, again, liberals are upset with Bill Maher for making this visit to the White House.
I just wanted to report exactly what I saw. I did it to the best of my abilities.
Counterpoint?
Honest as I can be. Yes.
Counterpoint?
Yeah.
Bill, I think you're right in saying that people have made too much of this, okay? It's not the Ulta Summit. You're not Churchill. Kid Rock is not Stalin. Trump sure shit isn't FDR, okay? So, yes, I believe too much has been made about this, but I think you've fallen into the trap. I think that I represent 99% of the internet when I say this, is that you've played the game of proximity is principle. And what people are worried about is not your motivation. We believe you. We love you, Bill. Everybody loves Bill, right? All right? So I'm not questioning your motivation. I'm questioning Trump's, okay? And if we can say that you went there in good faith, but maybe, just maybe, he wasn't there in good faith. I mean, you sold him on the Iran deal and he took it in. I mean, give me a break, okay? So the idea here is that your motivation is sound, but what's the impact? And I think a lot of people out there, fans of yours, people who love you, people who are fans of you, like me, I've been fans of you.
You don't have to patronize me, dude.
Okay.
I don't know you. I never met you.
I'm just saying that this comes from a
not
place
everybody
of
has to like it.
All I'm
That's
saying
what we said. There are people who didn't want it to happen at all. You sound like one of them. It's
no,
okay.
No.
But did you hear what I said?
Yeah.
Like, what is the alternative to not talking? Just sit at your lunch table and don't talk to anybody?
I talked to him. I've interviewed Trump. Here's the interview.
That's not it. That's just not an interview. This was not an interview.
I agree with the principle of engagement. I'm just saying, from his perspective, you have to understand that people out there know, all Americans know, that for him this was a PR stunt, and in his view, you were a prop in that PR stunt.
All right, so I love Bill Maher. I've been watching the guy's show, religiously for the last 20, 30 years. But, the guy goes to visit Trump in the White House, comes back somewhat gushing about the guy. Let's just call it what it is. And what happened is he got played by a narcissist. This is what they do. They're very charming. They suck you in. And Bill might have, I don't think he's ever been to the White House. I think he had him sign something for him. I mean, he came out of this thing looking, I don't know, dare I say, a little bit like a fanboy. Just very excited to be in that position and to talk to Donald Trump and kick it with him and Kid Rock. But, to rail against this guy and what he did on January 6th and what he did as an assault on our democracy and what he's done every day since he's been in power to completely turn the country upside down, with race relations during that whole situation, or, what he's doing with Russia, Putin, Ukraine. It's one thing to be critical of the guy, but then because you had a nice little chat and a dinner with him and he fed into your ego like narcissists do, he made you feel important, he turned on his little charm and charisma. I don't know, Bill. And then you get to go and report that back to your very liberal and independent audience. Feels a little bit like you got taken advantage of. And the guy who was on your show this week tried to call you out on that, and I think he did it about the nicest way possible, and it kind of triggered you. So you may want to take a look. I mean, Joe Scarborough, and his Minka, they went down there to Mar-a-Lago. This seems to be what everybody's doing now. It's kind of like if you can't beat him, join him mentality. But Bill, you were one of the most vocal people speaking out against this guy. And because he invited you to the White House and you shared a couple Diet Cokes, all of a sudden you're singing a different tune. Michael Rappaport singing a different tune. You might be getting played. That's all I'm saying, guy.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Once again, we get to see how the mind of a liberal works and how childish liberals tend to be, right? This is extremely petty from liberals to be upset with Bill Maher, not because they won't admit that him going was the right thing to do, right? Some of them will admit that, yeah, it is the right thing to do, okay? If the president invites you to the White House, you should probably go, right? Regardless of whether or not you like the president or not. I mean, you are being invited to the White House. But what they're concerned about is, well, Trump is getting a win, that Trump played you, right? He worked his charm on you, right? Rather than the principle of the fact that you have two people on opposite sides of the political aisle who don't like each other, at least publicly speaking. They don't like each other. They have insulted each other, coming together and putting their differences aside and having a conversation instead of celebrating that for what it is, which is something that we should be celebrating in this country, to be honest with you, considering how divided we are, right? To have somebody like Bill Maher and President Trump sit down at the table and, have a normal conversation, right? Instead of celebrating that, no, they're worried about the optics. Oh, you made Trump look good, right? You're normalizing Trump, right? That's what they're upset about. They're upset about President Trump looking good. Again, and this reminds me of what's happening right now with the whole tariff thing, right? And this is why it really annoys me how liberals think, how petty they are. Because, again, I've talked about this and I'll continue to talk about it. A lot of the opposition to President Trump and his tariff war against China is, again, one, these people are pro-China because they have investments in China and they want the status quo because the status quo is what allows them to continue to get rich, right? But other than that, there is a massive Trump hate where they're like, you know what? We just don't want to give Trump a win no matter what. We don't care who wins, right? As long as Trump doesn't win, right? China can win. Everybody else can win except Trump, right? We just want Trump to lose no matter what. Even if it sinks America, even if America loses, as long as Trump loses, as long as Trump doesn't win, then we're good. And that's the mentality of liberals. And you're seeing that same mentality play out right here, where they will admit that, yeah, you didn't make a bad decision going to the White House, right? If the president is willing to meet, then yeah, you probably should meet, right? You probably should try to, convince him that our viewpoints or that he's wrong on certain things. But we don't like the optics of it. We still don't think you should go because you're making Trump look good. He worked his charm on you and you came back, you had nice things to say about President Trump. So therefore you got played, right? This is a PR stunt. So again, now they're mad that Bill Maher came back and said nice things about President Trump. That Bill Maher didn't come back and say President Trump is Hitler. He's the worst person in the world. He was so rude. He was a terrible guy, right? That's what they're upset about. They're pissed. They're pissed that he went, and then they're pissed that he came back and he said nice things. And it really shows you how intolerant liberals have become, how petty they become. They're childish, okay? And they're extremely Trump deranged. There are levels to Trump deranged. For as Trump deranged as I believe Bill Maher is, he's not so Trump deranged that he won't meet with the president or that he won't sit down and have dinner with the president. Because you don't have to like somebody to have dinner with them. I mean, if you truly disagree with somebody on policy and they're in power, I think it is justifiable to sit down and have dinner, at the very least to tell them why they're wrong, right? Because otherwise, they're not going to hear the arguments if you don't take the opportunity that you have to sit down and to talk to them and tell them, hey, this is why I think you're wrong, which is what Bill Maher did. And President Trump took that in stride, right? He took that in stride and he didn't get mad. He didn't get upset. He didn't get pissed. He just said, okay, all right, I understand your criticism. And, they kept it moving. Again, this is not how the media portrays Trump. And because of that, liberals are boohoo, whining, and crying about what Bill Maher did. Wow, incredible stuff. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.